So, I just want to spend a few moments perhaps sharing a bit of a story that describes somewhat of what this day is all about. What is baptism about? And I wonder, who here loves a good story? Put your hand up if you enjoy a good book, okay? Or if you enjoy a really good Netflix series. Some of the same hands, some different hands. I'm probably more of a Netflix guy than a book guy myself, but I like a bit of both. I like a good biography, somebody's like life story, something that really happened. You know, you get these celebrities that have their biographies out and you find out what their life was like as a child. I quite enjoy those sorts of books. But I think the thing is, we all enjoy a good story because there's something about story that brings us in. There's something about what a story shares to us and does in us that we love. We share them all the time, sometimes even without thinking about it. We might go up to somebody and you won't believe what's just happened. Let me tell you what I've just seen, what I've just heard. That's a story. You've been there at this exciting moment and you want to share the story of what happened, what you saw. Or perhaps it's that juicy news headline. Oh, you won't believe what so-and-so has done now. There's plenty of that about. Or perhaps it might be a book or a Netflix series. Who's got time for some of these Netflix series, by the way? The length of hours of TV to watch. But there's something about it. I think once you've done one episode, you're hooked. Because you need to know what happens next. They always leave it on a cliffhanger. It's like, I've got to find out what happens next. Because they grab us, they grab hold of us, they draw us in. They also, to be honest, probably help us escape from reality a little bit as well. You know, if our lives are really hard or we're just knackered from a day at work or something like that, you're like, do you know what? I just need to watch some TV and not think about life for a few moments. I just want to watch something and escape from reality. But also stories help us to convey truth and meaning. We get to see through somebody's eyes. We get to, find out something of what that story is trying to share with us. The Bible itself as well is a collection of books. We believe that the Bible itself is one big story, God's story of his relationship with humanity, his seeking after us, and time again, his grace and his love and his mercy and our ability as human beings to mess it up a little bit once or twice or a few more times. And Jesus himself, when he was here on earth, he loved a good story. You could say he was probably one of the best storytellers that has ever lived because he always told stories to convey truth and meaning of what God was like, what heaven might be like when we get there, what life was supposed to be like. There's something around over 30 different parables or stories in just those 4 early books of the New Testament alone, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the kind of the Gospels we call them, the eyewitness accounts of Jesus' life. Over 30 different stories. And he would often begin it with a sentence of, the kingdom of heaven is like. And then he'd go off on some elaborate thing about a farmer or a seed or whatever else it might be. And we're going to look at one of those stories this morning because I think it potentially helps describe what we're looking at this morning with baptism. It helps to describe maybe what's going on in the lives of these people that are coming this morning and being baptized. And it's a really, really short story. It's 1 sentence long. You find it in Matthew chapter 13. If you've got a Bible, you can turn to it. But it will also come up on the screen for us. And this is what it says. There's his opening line. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a treasure that a man discovered hidden in a field. In his excitement, he hid it again and sold everything he owned to get enough money to buy that field. So what's this story about one nut job digging in a field got anything to do with baptism? I'm glad you asked. I think this story really helpfully describes a finding God experience. What it's like when we see who Jesus is, when we find out who God is. I think this story helps us to describe that. So I'm going to use 3 words out of this story this morning, and we're going to look at them very briefly to see what they have to say about baptism. And then I'm going to shut up and we're going to hear stories from the actual people being baptized because they're way better than anything I've got to say. But the first word is discovered. It says in there, the kingdom of heaven is like a treasure that a man discovered hidden in a field. And I wonder, for you in your life, have you ever had a discovery like he's had? Perhaps for you it was when you first laid eyes on that person who you just knew was the one. Your eyes met across a crowded room. That kind of discovery. Or perhaps it's that kind of teeny tiny little fingers and little toes discovery, when you see and hear them make their first breath kind of discovery. A couple of people in this room are probably going to find that out in a few weeks' time or a few days' time. That kind of like moment when you know that life is never going to be the same again. For good and for bad. Good days, bad days. Or perhaps it's that moment when you're like, I have found why I am alive. I found my calling, I found my purpose in life kind of discovery. That job that just fits you so perfectly and you know, that's what I'm supposed to do with my life. Or you find your meaning in life in something perhaps higher than yourself. That kind of discovery. Or a moment of discovery that takes your breath away, that's what I would call an oh wow kind of moment. I'm personally a lover of mountains. I like to go hiking and walking in mountains, especially where it's really kind of barren and you just see mountains for miles. And when you get up to the top, it's like, oh wow, that is a view. And it makes all of the hard climb so worth it. It's that kind of an oh wow kind of moment that this guy is having as he digs in the field. He's digging the treasure and he finds it and he goes, oh wow, my life is never going to be the same again. And so, he's excited. He's like, oh my goodness. This is kind of like the world's best discovery. I mean, can you imagine him? I don't know what he's doing in the field. He doesn't really tell us why he's there, digging in a field that he doesn't actually own, by the way. But he's digging away in this field, and you can just imagine digging away, and then suddenly a kind of, thump. That's supposed to be a bit more, hit a wooden box type treasure box, and he digs it out and he opens it and it has that kind of big shining thing that they always have in the movies, it's like the gold lights up his face and he's like, oh my goodness. In his excitement, he sees it and he's like, that's more treasure than I've ever seen in my entire life. So he does a bit of a weird thing. He kind of buries it back down in the ground again and covers it back over. So hopefully nobody finds it. He's thinking, I've hit the jackpot. Big time. His heart's maybe racing inside of his chest and it's starting to beat really fast. And he's like, oh, I don't know what to do with this. Buries it, hides it in the ground. I'm going to come back for that. I don't want anybody else to find that. I wonder what you would do in that situation if you found something so valuable, so precious. Well, what the man does is he runs away and he sells everything he has. Everything that he has, so that he can raise enough money to go and buy this field. We're not told how big this field is. We're not told there's any more treasure in this field. We're just told that he finds this one treasure, doesn't mention how big it is. But to him, it's clearly worth selling everything else that he owns to go back and be able to buy this field. I mean, can you imagine his friends? It doesn't say that he's got any other family, but imagine if he had a wife or children thinking, Dad, what on earth are you doing? Like, we're selling the house? Why? Or imagine his friends like, dude, you're nuts. Why are you selling everything you've got? And he might not even have told them at this point, like, well, I found this treasure in a field. And he goes away. And, you might say the same thing, like, why are you getting in a pool of water, like fully clothed and doing this weird thing? Because I found a treasure that's worth more than anything else that I own. The man sold everything he owned to get enough money to buy the field. See, he knows the truth of the value of what he's found, despite what other people may say about the craziness of his actions. He knows. He knows what it's worth. He knows that what he's losing by selling everything else that he has is pretty small by comparison. Which is really crazy in our world where it's kind of like it's about accumulating stuff, isn't it? Our world is often kind of like, well, it's about what you've got that matters. This is kind of totally radically different. And it's an understanding from the man that the things that I've got, they're not going to last the test of time. But what I found is, He's having a moment maybe where he thinks, I know there must be more to life than this. And I've found it. More treasure than I've ever seen before. Life-changing. My life will never be the same again kind of treasure. And I wonder whether we've ever asked ourselves that question before. There's got to be more to life than this. There's got to be more to life than the mundane, boring 9 to 5 that I'm living. Where's there joy to be found in this? Where's the life in all of its fullness that I so desperately want? There's got to be more. I know I've asked myself that question many times. And I can remember my own baptism day. When I got baptized, I was 18. And me and some friends, we'd come together to be baptized. And the church didn't have a nice pool like this. So we had a paddling pool that was really low down, about as tall as this, filled with water, ice cold. They promised, we'll put some kettles in at the end, it'll be fine. It was not fine. It was like the Arctic level cold water, and I was lowered all the way to the floor. But I remember that day like it was yesterday. And perhaps if you've been baptized and you're here, you can remember it too. You can remember the day you got baptized. Martin Luther King Jr. puts it really well. He says, there are some things so dear, some things so precious, some things so eternally true that they are worth dying for. I think that's pretty cool. There are some things in life so dear and so precious and so true that will live beyond all the stuff that we may accumulate in life, that they're worth dying for. And kind of a bit of a thing we say about baptism is it's a kind of like going under the water. It's like I'm dying to myself. I'm kind of putting off my old way of living my life because I found something that is so eternally precious and true and worth dying for in that sense. So 3 words: discovered, excitement, sold. This finding God experience moment that these 5 who are being baptized today, they can say that I've had that moment, and that's what today is. I'm selling everything else that I own, metaphorically speaking. Stories are powerful. Stories can be really powerful. And I think Jesus' first listeners would have been on the edge of their seats hearing as he told these stories. What do you mean by that? What is that saying? Tell me more. I want to know more. Tell me about this kingdom of heaven that you're talking about. I want to experience it. There must be more to life. You're telling me there's more to life than what I'm currently experiencing. And so in a moment, we're going to hear stories from those 5. Because baptism is a significant moment in people's lives, and it's kind of, for many, it's a culmination of things and time and thinking and a belief in their heart, in their minds, in their hearts, that now they want to stand up in front of all of us friends and family this morning and say, this is what I believe. I have found something so dear, so precious, and so eternally true that I want to do something potentially a little bit crazy this morning. Come and get baptized. Come and get dunked in a pool of water. What they're saying is I want to live a different story. I don't want to live my own story anymore. I want to live a different story. And there's a church leader called Sam Wells. He describes baptism like this. He says it's moving from a one-act play, which is essentially my life revolves around me, my story. But baptism is moving from a one-act play to a 5-act play, God's story. The story of creation and God's covenant with us and Christ coming and dying for us. The birth of the church. And then that kind of future time where the world will be made whole again. 5-act play is the most dramatic and momentous thing that can ever happen to a person. Today's a big day. Not just for the 5 that are being baptized, but I know for you guys it's a big day. But it's a big day for us as a church family to celebrate with you. As you say that I'm not living for myself anymore, but actually I'm living for God. I want to live part of his story, not my own. And I'm going to finish with one more person's story very quickly. A guy called Paul in the New Testament. Wrote a lot of the letters in the New Testament of the Bible. And he was a guy, he kind of had it made. He was doing good for himself. He had a good position. He had a good leadership. He had everything he probably wanted. He was living his story and living it well. And then he has an encounter with Jesus that kind of changes his life. He gets blinded and then he gets to see again and kind of crazy. He's in and out of prison most of his life because of his beliefs. If you want to read about it, go and read some of his stories. But he describes life a bit like this. It's from a book called Philippians in the Bible. This is a little clip from it, but I'll read the bigger section. He says, "Yet whatever gains I had, these I have come to regard as loss because of Christ. More than that, I regard everything as loss because of the surpassing value of knowing Christ Jesus my Lord. For his sake I have suffered the loss of all things, and I regard them as rubbish, in order that I may gain Christ and be found in him, not having a righteousness of my own that comes from the law, but one that comes through faith in Christ, the righteousness from God based on faith. I want to know Christ and the power of his resurrection and the sharing of his sufferings by becoming like him in his death. If somehow I may attain the resurrection from the dead, not that I have already obtained this or have already reached the goal, but I press on to lay hold of that for which Christ has laid hold of me. Brothers and sisters, I do not consider that I have laid hold of it, but one thing I have laid hold of, forgetting what lies behind and straining forward to what lies ahead. I press on towards the goal, towards the prize of the heavenly call of God in Christ Jesus." I count everything else as rubbish, he says. You could use our other story. I'm selling everything else because I want Jesus. He's had a finding God experience. He's found a new story to live in, God's story. These 5 being baptized this morning, they have made that same decision. And I wonder, what about the rest of us? What story are we living in? What story do we want to live in? What does a finding God experience mean for you? What might it mean for you?